Can you guys hear me now? I really apologize about this. I've been trying to deal with this audio for the last half an hour. Anybody? Can anybody hear me? Yes, you can hear me. Good. Does it sound okay? All right, good. Thanks, everybody. I apologize. Wow. You know what it is? It was, I was on Chrome and I was having all of these issues. Then I switched to Safari and then Safari gave me issues. So now I've switched back to Chrome. Thanks, everybody. Everybody hears me loud and clear. Appreciate it. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Well, that was a dilemma, let me tell you. I got to tell you, technology's great until it stops working. All right, let's get into pictures. Everybody wants to see pictures of their car. So let's start off with single malt is the handle here on the live stream with a 1988 Jeep Grand Wagoneer. Isn't that a beauty? That's got to be close to the end of that run, I would think. This is Ray Hall with his WRX. That's a beautiful color. Next up is Jason Zhang, I should say. He's got a GT2, that's the Porsche, and an M2. I guess he likes the number 2. GT2 and an M2. It's a 996 GT2. That is pretty freaking cool. And an M2. Then we have Boston Ma, who's been on here with his GTI. This is family cars now. E-Class wagon. E39 530 5 Series would be my pick of the three. And a TSX, which is a super great car. And unfortunately, they don't make the TSX anymore. TSX was the European Accord we got here as an Acura. This is Jim in Ottawa with his TT cab or his convertible. He calls it his GTI convertible. That's a nice looking car. Next up is Ed with his Genesis. And he got rid of the Genesis and bought an Elantra and a couple of beautiful cars. Nice yard too. Next we have VA Sun, an Accord Touring V6 at our nation's capital. That's the Parliament buildings in the background and the National Gallery to the left there, mirroring the Parliament buildings. Great city, beautiful car. And this is, look, check this out. David Gray sent me this. He has an E36 M3, has 514,000 kilometers on it. 514,000 kilometers on it. Now that, my friends, is cool. All right. So thanks to everybody who sent in their pictures, and we'll do more of those. If you want, send them to zach@motormouth.ca. That's my email, zach@motormouth.ca. Make sure it's with a CK, not a CH, zach@motormouth.ca. Okay, so we opened up the live chat just before 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 Pacific, so nobody can jump the queue. So let's get into your questions. I saw your Kia review and the comparison to Hyundai, which left me wondering, why do they have two product lines when their platforms are often shared engine, transmission, infotainment, and pricing? Well, it's a very good question because Hyundai and Kia share pretty much everything is the same. If you look at their certain model lines, you can see which other car they share it with. I'm not sure what the theory was, and now they've added the Genesis line on top of Hyundai. That makes perfect sense, that you can have a premium brand on top of Hyundai, but you know what? These brands are continuing to sell very well, which makes me believe that they're going to continue with this idea. No, you can see they're trying to do a different kind of styling. Sort of Kia's a little more youthful and sporty, and Hyundai's a little more elegant and upmarket, and then Genesis above that. I agree with you though. So our super chats are coming in if you want to do that. Hey Zach, for leisure drive, would you choose a stock or PDK on a Porsche? Oh, stick or PDK on a Porsche. If it's just for sheer leisure and it's me, it would be a stick all day long. Now, do you share the car with somebody? Does somebody else in your family drive it that maybe doesn't drive stick? That's something to think about. And oh, by the way, we have another super chat in here. But back to your question. It really comes down to, are you the only person driving it? And do you like to drive stick? And if you do drive stick, that's the one I would pick. Oblivious 713. Do regular people notice the air intakes on cars being mostly fake? The sound and the exhaust is fake. And if they knew, would they still buy? Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you're talking about hood scoops and things like that. Those are obviously fake. And then, yeah, the exhaust is piped into the car, often through the stereo. That's fake. And if they knew about it, would they still buy? I think most people, even if they knew about it, would still buy. I would like to have a delete for those things, like the piped-in audio for the exhaust that makes it this artificial exhaust. I think should be. You can turn it off and on. I'm trying to remember what car it was. I think it was. I think it was a Mercedes-Benz that when you put it in the sport mode, the exhaust sound was so drony inside the car that it really wasn't any fun to drive. I'm going to make sure I didn't miss any other super chats because of the whole issue we had with the audio. So I apologize for all of that at the beginning. It seems to be really interesting how YouTube one day likes, you would think Chrome would be the platform of choice, but last week it was Safari. Hey, I'm torn between a 2020 S5 Coupe or a 2020 M340. I live in Vancouver. Well, these are both fantastic cars. Well, one is a coupe. Are you talking about the S5 Sportback? I'm not sure because they're both fantastic. If it was me and it was just based purely on the engines, the inline six-cylinder from the BMW all day long. But I really do like what Audi does with their A4 platform. That's the family that uses that platform, whether it's the A4 or the A5, the S5, and so on. So what it comes down to is try them both and see which one you like. The inline six-cylinder from BMW is pretty hard to pass up, though. Michael Johnson, hey Zach, another Porsche question. I think I'm going through a midlife crisis. Good for you, especially if you can afford a Porsche. Have you ever been in the Porsche travel experience? There's one in BC and Nova Scotia doing the Cabot Trail. Sounds like fun. Yeah, I've done it. Case Nierop is a friend of mine. He runs that with Jonathan, trying to remember Jonathan's last name. But I've been on many Porsche events with them. They're basically the ones that host those drive experiences. And what you typically get is a follow the leader situation. My only negative with it is that they're on the radio all the time. They have a two-way radio and every car has a two-way radio and they talk a lot during it. And I often turn it off. But yeah, it's a great opportunity to experience the cars. And these people are fantastic. I mean, Case Nierop was a factory Porsche driver, raced for Porsche with the 959 at Le Mans. I mean, these guys are top notch. So if you have wanted to give it a shot, and when we get back up and we can do these sorts of things again, it is worth having some fun with it, for sure. You get to experience the brand new cars with people that can tell you all about them. Paul Lindo, hey Zach, and thanks to everybody for coming back. Mike is a regular, and Paul is a regular. With Mazda able to get reasonably good fuel economy from a 6-speed, I wonder if the added weight and complexity of a 9 and 10-speed are necessary. Well, you bring up a very good point, and some people knock. I mean, I did a Mazda 3 review, and people are knocking it, saying it's only got a 6-speed automatic transmission, but they don't need that yet. You've got to remember, and I've spoken about this many times on these live chats. The cars that you get are not just built for you as a car enthusiast and a consumer, they're built for government regulations. And Mazda, because of their Skyactiv technology and the fact that they don't have large engines, they have 4 cylinders for the most part. Yeah, they have 4 cylinders because even in the CX-9, they've got the turbocharged 4-cylinder. They are able to meet their corporate average fuel economy standards quite easily with that technology. So high compression engines, even a diesel available in the marketplace, and these cars get very good fuel economy to the point that Mazda has the best corporate average fuel economy of any company sold. Take out Tesla, of course, of mainline car manufacturers. That's because their cars are already efficient and they don't sell trucks that use V8s and so on. So if they needed to add more gears to get even more efficient, they can easily do that. But right now, they don't, and I don't think it makes the car any less or drivable. I think it makes it just fine. Is there a difference between Kia and Hyundai shopper buyers? What other brands do they cross-shop with, respectively? I don't know the exact answer to that. All I can tell you is that Kia and Hyundai typically cross shop more with Japanese brands. So people look at them as an alternative to buying another Japanese product. They go for a Korean brand. And often they were seen as less expensive alternatives. So, hey, I can go and buy a Toyota or I can buy a Honda. Oh, maybe I'll consider a Hyundai or a Kia as a value proposition. But I think that's changing. Next time I'm with somebody from Kia or Hyundai, I can ask them that. Hey, Zach, love your show. Confused between X1, Q3, Mercedes GLB, and the XC40. Which one would you recommend? These are all excellent products, and I have to say that you've chosen some very good choices here. My favorite of the bunch is the Q3. I just think it gives you a great, elegant looking vehicle with nice handling, a nice size, and it's not going to kill you too much. If you don't add on too many options, the price I think is very good. The best one for packaging, without question, is the CX-40. The interior packaging of that Volvo is so well done. They did a really nice job with it. However, when it comes to sort of more drivability and fun factor, I would say the GLB really surprised me. That was a really fun to drive vehicle. The engine was fantastic. The transmission worked very well. It felt very spry and light on its feet. And the X1 is sort of in that camp as well. However, with the X1, they don't offer the uprated engine that they get in the X2. So these are all good choices. For me, if I was just going to say which one I'm going to buy right now, boom, it would be the Q3. I think that the Q3 is, without question, the vehicle really, in my opinion, to beat in this class right now. Philip316, thank you for the super chat. Hey, Zach, how does it work with press cars? Do you pay for the gas and insurance, or do the car companies? Pay for the gas, yes. The car companies self-insure these cars. They have to have liability insurance, obviously, if they're licensed here in the province of British Columbia. And if they get in an accident, there's a waiver you sign saying you're liable for X number of dollars. Like, say there's an accident that happens, you have to pay a certain amount. But I've never heard of anybody actually having to pay that. I have had vehicles that were damaged. I had a beautiful Genesis G80 parked in front of my house, and a Dairyland milk truck went down the side of it. It was parked there. I went out in the morning, and the guy walking his dog says, "Oh, I saw the truck that hit that car. It was a Dairyland delivery truck." And they self-insured that car. So they don't have insurance on all these cars. If there's any damage, they just pay to fix it. And they paid a lot of money to fix that car. They didn't charge me for it. I wasn't even driving the car. I've had parked in front of my house pickup truck mirrors taken off. Same thing, a truck going by and taking it off. So things like that have happened to me. But for the most part, we pay for the gas. We pick up and drop off the cars as well. It's very different in the United States. In the United States, they have major media fleet organizers, like one of the big ones is called Page One. And what they do is they deliver the car to you every week, and then they pick it up, and you don't pay for any gas. I mean, that's sweet, but we don't get that in Canada. If you had to choose between a Macan S and a base BMW X5 with the inline-six cylinder, and if the X5 was 10% cheaper than the Macan S, which would you pick for everyday use and occasional long drive? Like, they're totally different vehicles. I'm sorry, they're not even in the same category. I mean, the X5 is so much bigger. It's just a much bigger car. So, I mean, if it's just sheer fun to drive, the Macan S, it's going to win, because it's just smaller and nimble and drives like a car. It's as close as you're going to get to driving like a car in a utility. So these are not even comparable. Hey, Zach, Kia Soul EV or Nissan Leaf? It's interesting because, excuse me, we have our Niro, a Kia Niro video that's in the queue here to be edited and will be coming out in the next week or so. And what I would suggest is that we kind of went through the process of this. And when you start comparing the different models and what you get for the price, the Chevy Bolt actually looks really quite attractive. I think the Nissan Leaf with the Nissan Leaf Plus with the extra range is certainly a vehicle that you should consider. But when you start looking at the different packages, so they seem to all have a base model that's under $45,000. And then to get it equipped with the stuff you really want, it's really dramatically more expensive. And that's where I found the Bolt to have the longest range and to have more standard features. And I'm going to get a Bolt back. By the way, a lot of people don't realize the Bolt has been updated for this year, which is why it's got extra range and more features added into it. So consider the Bolt as well. But I think off the top of my head, from what I remember, the Leaf offers more stuff. Things like heated seats and heated steering wheel as their base model. Roy Park is back. Hey, Zach, bought a CX-5 Turbo and I'm leasing. I'm going to go back and pick it up. What should I purchase from Business Manager? Lease protection. Does gap insurance come with leasing in British Columbia? I'm not sure what you mean by gap insurance. Are you talking about maybe you can't afford to pay for the lease because of work stoppage? I think those sorts of policies are available. What you should get from the business office is most of this stuff is just an opportunity for them to sell you something that you might not use. For the most part, I'm not a big believer in buying anything other than just taking the car. If you have to have some repairs done to the vehicle when the lease is done before you give it back because you've scuffed the bumper or spilled a coffee on the seat or curbed all the wheels, well, that's stuff you'd have to do if you were going to sell the car privately anyway. You might want to consider something like a wheel protection package, something like that, but that's maybe what you're talking about, like the lease protection package. So considering what the price is, if it's not too expensive, then you might want to consider that, because the vehicle will go back and it will have to be in a certain condition, or you have to pay for those repairs. If that coverage covers all of that and it isn't too expensive, that's one to consider. The gap insurance, from what you're saying, is right now we're going through this COVID thing, and if you couldn't afford to pay it, they can cover that. That's something that you should ask them about. Portuguese Water Dog. Would a manual car be less expensive to maintain over time than an automatic transmission? It really comes down to how you drive. If you know how to drive a manual and you're good at it, it can be a lot less expensive. However, if you're crappy at driving an automatic, a manual, and you ride the clutch and you wear it out, it can be more expensive because you're having to get a clutch put in. I think it really comes down to how good a driver you are. Here's the thing is, there's a lot of variables with a manual transmission, but with an automatic, if it's a tried and true sort of torque converter style transmission, like a good old, 6-speed automatic, that really should have no maintenance issues with it for many years. So the manual might actually be more expensive in the long run. Now, you can also get automatic transmissions that are really quite complex and fail, and they can be expensive too. So it depends. There's a lot of variables there. Hey, Zach, do you know the rebates work for electric cars in British Columbia? They dropped the price. It used to be, what was it? I'm trying to remember now. Was it 8,000 or 5,000? Anyway, they dropped the prices down. It's based on the size of the battery and also the starting price of the vehicle. And also, if you're going to scrap a vehicle, you can ask for a scrap it program. If you've got an old junker you want to sort of scrap, you will get extra money on top of that. Plus, you get the $5,000 from the federal government. So what I would suggest you do, I think now you can top out at 8,000 when you can combine them. What I would do is call a prospective salesman or saleswoman at a dealership and ask them about the specifics of that car. If it's like X car or Y car, phone them and say, what are the rebates? They'll be able to help you with that. Zach, would you spend $600 on a smartwatch like Apple, or do you still think old and tested dials still the way to go? Well, I've invested so much money in Swiss timepieces. I'm definitely in the camp that I'm going to stick with the old watch for what it does, to just tell the time and maybe the date. I'm not a smart watch kind of person, but I do have, Brian Chow, who has his channel Everyday Reviews, who I used to work with on driving television. He switched to the Apple Watch and just absolutely loves it, just is crazy for it. So maybe it's this way. Maybe I don't want to get one because I might like it. And then if I liked it, then all of these would have to go, which wouldn't be bad because I'd make some money. Why do you think of motoring giving their car of the year to an SUV? I guess it's the world we live in. Kenzie liked the Corvette. I like that choice better than the Mazda. Yeah, so the CX-30 won for their car of the year. Their truck of the year was the Gladiator. I wasn't involved with motoring when they chose that vehicle. Hopefully this coming year I'll get a vote on that. But I'm not sure why they chose that. I think you're absolutely right. It is a sign of the times. So is it a car or is it an SUV? It's kind of in between. I have a 14 E63 wagon. Well, aren't you lucky? I want to upgrade and we'll spend 80,000 US dollars. What would you recommend? All I can ask is, what are you thinking of? Are you thinking about getting another wagon? I need more information than that. Okay, I'm going to skip down because I had all of these ones about the audio earlier. You said that you like the Corolla hybrid, and on another occasion that you dislike slow hybrids. The Corolla hybrid should be no faster than the Prius, so I'm a bit confused. Can you clarify? The Corolla hybrid was really quite satisfying to drive. It was interesting because it has some common architecture with the Prius, but not totally. So when we test drove the Prius when it came out several years ago, we were told by Toyota that it was on the new global platform. And then last year, I said to one of the executives at Toyota, how come the Corolla drives so differently from the Prius? Aren't they on the same platform? And they said, no. It's the Prius was not a full Toyota global, the new global platform. The Corolla is. I just found the Corolla very satisfying. I'm not sure why it drives so differently, but it certainly does. And I think that it was really quite satisfying in the city. When you get into situations where you're wanting to pass and do heavy acceleration to merge on the highway, that's where these small four cylinders really start to show that they don't have a lot of power. But for day-to-day commuting and bumper-to-bumper traffic, I found the Corolla very worthwhile. Hey Zach, thanks for doing these chats. I'm thinking of updating my 16 CTS off warranty in June. What sedan would you consider buy or lease? This is from Michael Chu. Well, Michael, it's always good if you can give me some examples of what you're looking at. Would you get another Cadillac? Because there's a whole bunch of new Cadillacs that have just come out that certainly look good, and that's something that I would ask you. How did you like the CTS? I like the Cadillac products. I think they've done a very good job on them. So that's my question back to you, and maybe give me a couple of examples. Now, you don't have to do the super chat. What I'll do now is, Michael, you type away what you're considering. I'll give you the answers, and just do it in a regular chat. I'll look at the bottom here in a second. This is from Josh. Josh, it's good to have you back. Josh has been a regular contributor here to the live show. Zach, I saw a white Taycan Turbo yesterday in the neighborhood, and I had to stop to take a look. It looks like the future. Wow, wow, wow. It is quite the car. It is quite the car. Somebody actually emailed me yesterday saying they're considering leasing a Taycan 4S. I'm like, wow, wouldn't that be nice to be in that position? It really is a good-looking car. My only complaint with the car is that the back seat's small. So if you don't really need it for back seat space, like they'll sell you a Panamera, but that's not an electric car, and it really is as the fastest thing I've ever been in. And the fact that it's electric and a Porsche, I mean, it handles beautifully. I think they did a beautiful job with it. Yeah, if you have a Taycan in your future, lucky you. Johnny V, I'm considering a Velar. What are your thoughts on it? My current vehicle is a 14 QX70 from Infiniti. I like the Velar. I'm not totally blown away by the Velar. I think the interior is really sort of, the design is a bit of a standout. Now, there have been some bugs. This was the new dashboard they went to for JLR. They brought out their dual screens and all that kind of stuff. It hasn't been without fault, but I will say I like the layout. I think it's a really nice looking car. Johnny, all I can tell you is go and give it a shot and see what you think. If you like it, why not? These are great vehicles to lease because, Land Rover, Jaguar do not really have the best reputation when it comes to reliability. So that's something to consider about. Great to have one under warranty. Okay. Michael Chu, I'm happy with the CTS, but not crazy about the styling of the CTS. I'm replying to him. Rear end from side profile looks odd. I do agree with you. It looks a little bit soft from the back. Doesn't look as muscular as the front. Perhaps Audi, BMW, or Mercedes. I do like the idea of still supporting domestics. So what I would suggest, Michael, is maybe go and kick the tires of the newest, latest Cadillacs, because they have some really nice looking products in the pipeline. But if so, CTS, you're kind of looking more at a 5 Series. I would suggest that like a car like an Audi S4 or BMW M340. The M340 is really a fantastic car. The main reason is it's got the inline 6-cylinder engine, and it really just delivers the mail all day long and is quite an enjoying vehicle to drive. So that's one that I would consider. So if you have any other specific models, please let me know. Huge Haggis is having a gin and Perrier tonight. Next time you're talking with the PR rep, would you mind asking why they insist on having 20-somethings dance in their commercials? Is it good marketing strategy? Well, this is I've brought this up with car executives many times. I say you're marketing these cars at people who can't afford them. They can't afford these cars, and they say it's easier to sell a youthful car to an older person than you know, an older person's car to a younger person. So they're trying to appeal to the youthful spirit of people who aren't in their 20s any longer, but maybe view themselves as being 20-somethings. And gin and Perrier, that's what Andrea drinks. She had one of those last night. She had a gin and Perrier. She likes the lime Perrier. Jeff says, it's not the audio issue, it's you coughing and clearing your throat. Well, thanks for that. I told you, I've got acid reflux. I take Gaviscon before I start, because once I start talking, that's what happens. What are your primary thoughts on the Genesis small 4-cylinder turbo and the V6 turbo? Thank you. Well, I have no issue with it. We're going to have to try it out. This is going to be in the new GV80. They're going to have a turbo 4 and a turbo 6. The proof, as they say, is in the pudding. We got to try it out. I don't see there's anything wrong with it. All of the German brands have vehicles that have turbo 4 cylinders. The GLE 350 is a turbo 4-cylinder. The Q7 is sold with a turbo base model. BMW does not have one on the X5, but the fact that they have one, I don't think there's an issue at all. So let's wait and see what it's like. Hey Zach, I have an 18 Audi SQ5 as the lease is coming to an end soon. Would you recommend anything in the same class but moving to a 3-row seat? Well, Steve, this is a perfect segue from the last question. If you're not in a rush and you might be able to extend the lease on your Audi because of the whole COVID situation, you might want to wait and see what that new Genesis is like. It's going to be very interesting to see what the reviews are. It's supposed to be coming here this summer, so that is something to think about. A 3-row utility, the Genesis GV80, that's one. But if you're looking for a 3-row vehicle from Audi, have you tried the Q7? The Q7 is actually a bit of a sweet spot in there because it is designed as a 3-row utility, where a lot of the other products like the GLE and the X5 have a 3-row option, but they weren't really designed for that. They shoe them in the back, where the Q7 is designed to be a 3-row utility out of the gate. And then the premium brands, non-premium brands, have you thought of an Atlas? If you're a Volkswagen Group guy, have you ever thought of that as a 3-row utility? Oh, by the way, I just wanted to let you know that if we can do the likes. So right now it says we have 171 people viewing, and I'd like more likes. It helps. I noticed that over the last few days. It certainly helps. The likes are good. So if you can do it, you might have to, on your tablet or iPhone, go in and out of it to do it. But if you can get me some more likes, that would be great. I think people should give resale value more consideration when buying a car. My sister used a 2015 Benz SUV. Those things depreciate heavily around here, so it's worth nothing now. The number one cost of owning a vehicle isn't the insurance, isn't the gas, it's depreciation. It's what I call dollars in versus dollars out. If you have a vehicle that has a high residual value, meaning it holds more value after 3 or 4 years, the best investment is looking for vehicles that have high residual value because you will save so much money in the long run. There are some excellent vehicles, but the residual value is just not that good. And we're seeing that with cars. The value of cars is going down and SUVs are going up. So people are moving towards SUVs and car residual values are feeling it. So it's really something you have to consider. You can look up residual values, by the way. You can go to, if it's in Canada, Canadian Black Book, and I'm sure Kelly Blue Book in the United States will also show you that, but that's something to consider, is to look up what the residual value is. One way to look it up for a brand new car is to go into the lease calculator, and it'll tell you what the value of the vehicle is at the end of the lease, often online, and that will give you a good indication as to what they believe the vehicle is going to be worth. Hey Zach, do you expect the Porsche Taycan to depreciate on the same curve as other EVs? That's a really good question. And the interesting thing is EVs generally have not done very well when it comes to retaining their value, with the exception of Teslas have a pretty good residual value. A lot of electric cars do not. I would hope that, I haven't seen what the lease rates are like for the Taycan, that they will support their vehicle in the lease game, meaning that they will guarantee residual values, which would go a long way to appeasing people and how much they're going to depreciate. But it is a major concern. The biggest problem you have is that electric cars are like your smartphone. Every 2 or 3 years there's a new model and everybody wants to upgrade. And that's the problem with EVs, is every couple of years there's a new better range, faster charging, all those sorts of things. So the technology is moving so quickly that the older models, like you go and look for a used Nissan Leaf, they're cheap, man, especially the very early ones. So only time will tell. It'd be interesting to see how much Porsche supports that with their lease programs. What latest trend in cars is driving you crazy? For me, it's fake exhaust, with Audi and VW the main culprits. People touch on that a lot with the reviews. Oh, did you notice, by the way, I shaved that thing off. I tried the beard. I'd never grown a beard in my life. I tried it. Oh my God, hated it. After about 5-6 days, I'm like, ugh, get this thing off. So I shaved it yesterday. I couldn't. Andrea was happy. She doesn't like it. And she was giving me the evil eye with the beard. That bothers a lot of people, with the fake exhaust tips out the back or having no exhaust tips at all. Doesn't really bother me. It's the overall thing. What trend is driving me crazy? I hate lane keep assist in cars. The first thing I turn off in a car, it's like you get close and it's pushing you back in the lane. I hate that. That's the number one thing I dislike. So we have almost 200 people on right now and only 93 likes. Come on, people. Hit that like button. Give the Zach man a little more loving, would you? Hey Zach, my son wants his first car to be a used Infiniti Q50. I think it's too much power for a first car. What are your thoughts? I'm not sure how old Eddie, your son, is. Q50, yeah, that's a pretty low-slung, sporty sort of sedan. The only thing I would say in his favor is that it's not a small car. It's a mid-sized car. Pretty well put together. I think that the thing about the Q50 is it isn't really that fast unless you're getting, the higher horsepower version they have with the twin turbo and so on. So yeah, I'm not sure what I can say other than cars today are so much safer than when I learned to drive. There were no electronic aids, no airbags, no pre-tensioning seat belts and all those sorts of things. The one thing you got to feel a little better about is that it's not an SUV, so the tendency to roll over isn't there. It's got all of the airbags, and it's a good size car. It's not a tiny little car. So there are good and bad to both. Benjamin says, Bonjour from Montreal. I asked you about Subaru plug-in hybrid. You explained why Subaru didn't make this vehicle readily available. Now do you think we'll see the same with the RAV4 plug-in? Merci. Benjamin, I would suggest that the availability of the plug-in, the Prius Prime plug-in RAV4, sorry, not the Prius Prime, the Toyota RAV4 Prime will be limited by production. There's going to be a lot of demand for this, maybe tempered now because of the economy. Maybe some of those intenders that were in a good position to maybe buy or lease that aren't in that position anymore. So that could be actually beneficial, that there might be more availability of those cars. But I don't think they're going to be producing a lot of them right away. The demand is going to totally outstrip supply. As I said, it could be tempered a little bit because of the economy. And I don't think that they want to fill the pipeline with a lot of these right away. These are really what you call compliance cars. So cars that fulfill an obligation for zero emissions vehicles in certain jurisdictions, like the province of Quebec and the province of British Columbia, that have zero emission mandates. So that's where those cars will get targeted towards. That's why you see Subaru selling that hybrid in the Quebec marketplace. So what I would suggest is, it's not, and we don't know the price yet. That's the other big thing. They don't want it, they didn't really tell me. I asked them, if it's below $45,000 Canadian, then it gets a plug-in rebate. The problem with that is, then it brings the price and competes with the regular hybrid. So the Prime could be actually a better deal than the regular hybrid. That could be a problem for Toyota. But then if they price it over $45,000, it doesn't get any rebate. So we're going to have to wait and see on the price. What took Porsche so long to switch to water-cooled engines? Were the fans mad when they switched? Well, you maybe don't remember, if you're too young, that Porsche had water-cooled engines for many years. They had the 924, the 944, the 968. They had, what other ones did they have? The 928. They had water-cooled front engine, rear-wheel drive, and all-wheel drive cars. And then in the early 90s, Porsche got rid of all of those and just went right back to the Carrera. Quick history lesson on Porsche at that era. In the late 80s, early 90s, Porsche was almost bankrupt. And they got rid of all of their lines except for the 911. And they had, for about 3 or maybe more than that, from around 1993 or 4 until 1998, they had only the 911. So it was the 964 and the 993, the last of the air-cooled Porsches, were the cars that saved them. Very low production numbers, and they sold those worldwide, and they streamlined the processes. Then in the late 90s, they brought out the Boxster, and then eventually they brought out the Cayenne. But it was the Boxster that really resurrected Porsche. They were almost bankrupt. And when they brought out the water-cooled cars, there were a lot of purists like myself who didn't like so much the look of the car. It was the 996 and the cheap plastic interiors that weren't sort of reminiscent of the old cars. Here's the thing. All you have to do is look at the values of the air-cooled Porsches. These old 911s, the air-cooled ones, are worth a bomb. They've just gone up in value. Because what's that old saying? They don't make cars like they used to. In that case, they were actually some pretty cool cars. But when you drive them compared to a modern car, they really feel quite old. So they had water-cooled, they got rid of water-cooled, then they brought water-cooled back. It was just the fact that they brought it back in the 911, which was the controversial part. What is your experience of the Audi Quattro Ultra? Audi Quattro Ultra. Can you tell the car is front-wheel drive most of the time, or is it the transition fairly seamless? I'm not sure what you mean by Ultra. There's different systems available in different cars. So with the A3, they have a different all-wheel drive system than they have in the A4. So I'm not sure exactly which one you mean. Another super chat from Charlottetown Spud. Got a beautiful Type R. Did you see that? Civic Type R. have you heard that Kia is thinking of changing their emblem? The current Kia emblem has not aged, but the direction of the brand has been going on. Yes, I have heard that. There's been lots of speculation about that they're going to go to some kind of stylized K. And there seems to be a lot of resistance from some people to buying a car that says Kia on the back instead of having a stylized emblem. I mean, some people would even change it and put on some aftermarket things. So I think that, yeah, I haven't heard any confirmation 100%, but the speculation is rampant on the internet. Hey, Zach, what are your thoughts on the BMW 435? 435 is great. I mean, anything with 3.5 in it is good. That's the inline six cylinder. I think that it is a wonderful car. My neighbor, Alec, he has one. He's got a 435 Cabriolet with the retractable hardtop. The Grand Coupe is a really nice one because it was about the same price as the 3 Series, but had the sleeker lines and the big hatch around the back. If that's the one you're considering, that's the one I would look for if you're considering a 4-door vehicle. Hey, Zach, is the premium sports sedan space, has BMW 330i reclaimed the position, or would you still place the G70 and A4 above it? In terms of pure sportiness, are Giulia and G70 better? Well, if you're just looking for sheer handling, I would say the winner is going to be the Alfa. Alfa dials in much more assertive kind of steering feel to their cars, and they certainly have a sporty feel to them. The G70 and the BMW they use the same all-wheel drive system. It's a Canadian company called Magna. They tune it differently for each company, but that's something to consider. Is the new 330, here's the thing is, I'll be quite honest with you, I haven't driven the 330, I've only driven the 340, so I need to get my hands on it. I do like the A4 a lot. The A4, I wouldn't put into the sportiest category. I wouldn't put it into the most luxurious category. I would just put it into the category if it does everything really well. It's just a good all-rounder. That's why I like the A4 for a lot of people. It's sporty enough, it's luxurious enough, it's fun enough, and it does a good job at pretty much everything. It's a nice size. Styling is a bit weak, especially if you need to get the S4 is definitely a much more assertive looking car. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I like the A4. It does everything particularly well. The previous 330, didn't love it. The new 340 I drove, absolutely loved it. So I'm a bit strung there because I haven't driven that specific model. Fruzone Johnson, fun question. What vehicle brand would you think or love to see a redesign of the badge? That's a good question. Which badge would I consider a redesign? Well, I think Kia probably pops top of mind. I mean, I have a, let's see if I can do it. It was like a K with an I on it, and then it was like a K with an I on it like that. Can you see that? And then the bottom would be like the A. Like it would be the K, the I, and the A. That's what I had, and then put it in a circle. That's what I was thinking for Kia. But off the top of my head, that's the one I think certainly needs it. I like the Cadillac Crest. I think that's nice. What other ones? Can't think of any off the top of my head. I've seen a rumor Mazda preparing an inline six cylinder for the Mazda 6. Can the inline six work in front drive setup? I have heard that too, and I've seen there's certainly lots of information and stuff on that. What I think is quite interesting though is that you have Toyota owning a position of Mazda. Mazda makes an inline six cylinder engine. Toyota uses the BMW inline six cylinder for their Supra. What if they had a Mazda inline six cylinder turbocharged that they used in Supra? Now that would be kind of interesting. But BMW's inline six cylinder is like one of the best engines ever made. Maybe not the most reliable or the one you'd want to keep out of warranty, but man, is it a great engine. You can't take anything away from that. So I'm just curious to see how that works inside the sort of partnerships and ownership structure, Toyota owning a piece of Mazda, owning a piece of Subaru, and how they could use that. Could it work in a front-wheel drive setup? I think anything's possible. Would you ever post your Hummer wrap from driving television? Man, I don't even know where I'd find that. I mean, if you can find the link and send it to me, I'll post it. So I did a wrap back in the day about the Hummer, and it was actually pretty funny. So if you can find it and send me the link, I'll play it. Oh, someone's having Prosecco tonight. That's a good choice. The problem with only opening Prosecco, you got to drink the whole bottle. Or is that a problem? I don't know. Thoughts on the GSF being discontinued? Any chance a 5-liter engine in that car will be used for something other than the RCF, like a ISF? There is a 5-liter ISF. That does exist. Thanks for putting my Accord V6 on there. Yeah. Hey, Zach, waiting on the new TLX and the Lexus IS. Which one are you looking forward to? Looking to own one of them. Which one would you prefer? Interesting thing is I have the IS in June. I haven't driven the IS in a long time. The vehicle is certainly getting old, and if it was me and I had to put my money on it, I would probably say the IS, just because Lexus builds bulletproof cars. And Acura has some interesting cars, but they haven't been as reliable as Lexus. So there you go. That's the one I think I like. Hey, Zach, could you better explain the placement of the turbo in some of the new Porsches? I've heard the reference with Macan. Thanks. Can you explain the placement of the turbo in some of the new Porsches? Oh, I understand what you're saying. The placement of the turbos. So the turbos are between the rows of the pistons, very in the center of the V, close to the intake manifold, and that's what I think you're referring to. So they have the turbo engine is a 3-liter, and then the twin turbo is the 2.9-liter. Same location, but instead of a single turbo, it's a twin turbocharger. And so because it's closer to the intake manifold, they get more boost that way. And it's nestled between the V of the engine, so it's right close down in the middle. That's what they did with that. So the engine that's in the Cayenne, the engine that's in the Macan S, the engine that's in a lot of the Audi cars is the same 3-liter turbocharged engine. With the Macan, it has more power, but the same layout. And then they take that engine and they make the displacement from a 3-liter, a 2.9, but they add the twin turbo. Porsche uses that in the Panamera as well. Why is it we're stuck with Mazda 2 based Yaris instead of the new platform the rest of the world gets, including the GR4? I think it just comes down to cost. It just basically is they don't want to invest in a subcompact car in a market where people don't buy subcompact cars. If this was the heart of Europe, where people buy a lot of small cars, they would invest more money into it. But in North America, people just do not buy subcompact cars. They're abandoning them in big numbers. I believe Honda surpassed Mazda as the most fuel-efficient brand according to CAFE standards this year. That might be true, but for years, Mazda was the best, and I'm not sure if it's changed, but they certainly have been the best for a long time. Do you think all-wheel drive Accord TSX wagon with 300 horsepower and a choice of manual automatic would sell in North America? No. It's just so obvious that people aren't buying wagons. Excuse me. It's such a shame. Because there is nothing better than a wagon if you want to have utility and handling. But people don't care. They want to sit up high and see down the road, and that's why they buy utility vehicles. What are your thoughts of Q50s coming with all-wheel drive and 328 horsepower? The Q50 is available with all-wheel drive. Any thoughts on the new 2021 Honda Accord? Any rumor changes of the exterior and exterior styling? I don't know anything specific. For a Porsche fan like you, do you prefer anything like 997 or older with more mechanical feeling, or the later 991 or 992 models with less mechanical experience? At least in my opinion. If I could afford a new 992, I would buy that. I saw one at the grocery store the other day, and holy crap, it's a beautiful car. I would love to have a 992 4S. That would be a great car. Now, if I was going to look for an older, but not an air-cooled 911, I would look for a 997 turbo manual transmission. And I believe the last year they made it was 09, 10, around there. That's the unicorn I would look for. A 997 turbo manual transmission. That's the car I'd look for. Or a new 992. Hey, DJ Pleasure Seeking Missiles here. My favorite handle. Cheers, Zach. Curious to hear your thoughts on the Fiat 500 Abarth. My younger brother is looking to purchase one. Thanks for the shout out, by the way. There you go. Great fun car. Loads of fun. That's just a little bomb. Sounds great. Zippy little car. It's the reliability you've got to look out for. I don't have an issue with the way it drives. It's a great little car. What I would suggest is you do a lot more research on what are the problem areas with the car, what should you be looking for, what questions should you ask a potential seller, what should you get the mechanic to check when you're actually going to buy the car, all those sorts of things. So it is a load of fun to drive, and hopefully he's had a chance to drive it. The Mercedes-Benz GLA was released last week in Europe. Will be sold here in Canada. A review would be nice. Very nice reviews done. Thank you. The GLA, yeah, I think the GLA is coming here. I don't see why it wouldn't be. It's been a sort of cornerstone of that brand for sure. Are car prices going down? Odessa car auction, lots of southwestern Ontario are filling up. I don't think it's got anything to do with the fact other than that it's closed. I think that what's happening is I don't think that Odessa and Mannheim are running at full capacity yet here in Canada. In British Columbia, we have the auction open, so there's cars moving around. But the other thing you got to remember that cars are coming off lease and they have to go off into auction to move them along. I think it's just got to do with the fact that the economy is ground to a halt. And then once we start to lift these emergency bans, they're going to be able to, because dealers are supposed to be shut in Ontario. So I think that's what's happening is cars are just stacking up there because there's no movement yet. Once we get some movement, we'll get a better idea of what's happening with the prices of cars. All right. We're up against the clock here. We've done an hour. I apologize again about the audio at the beginning, or might still be going on. I tried my best. That's all I can do. Thanks to everybody that watched. I'll be back on Tuesday and on Thursday. Get your car questions in. If you want to get your car featured, before we go, I'll do them again. If you want to get your car featured on the show, make sure you send them to zach@motormouth.ca, ZACK@motormouth.ca. Here's Single Malt with his 1988 Jeep Grand Wagoneer. This is Ray Hall with his WRX. Next up is Jason Zhang from California with a GT2 and an M2. That's a pretty chunky looking driveway. Isn't that nice to wake up and decide which one of those you're going to drive? Then we have Boston Ma with his family cars, E-Class wagon, BMW 530 E39, pristine, that's beautiful, and a cool Acura TSX. That's a nice car to drive too, especially if it's manual. Next is Jim in Ottawa with his TT Cabriolet. That's a beautiful car. Then we go down to Ed featuring his Genesis, and that is gone now. He replaced it with a Elantra. And then we have VS Sun with this Accord Touring from Ottawa. It's a V6, last of the V6. That's a nice car. Then you get this car, David Gray, with an M3. It's an E36 with 514,000 kilometers on it. Now that's a commitment, I tell you. Okay, thanks to everybody for checking in today. We'll talk to you again on Tuesday. Have a great night. See you then. Bye-bye.